what I'm hoping we can do tonight is just provide you with a snippet of what would have been at the event, but some really interesting perspectives. And we've had some fantastic questions through, some really well thought through questions that like are really, really deep and things that I think need talking about. So thank you to everyone who sent through questions. And like Julia said, we'll try and get us through as many as possible. But afterwards, I'm always open for people sending me messages. I might be a little bit slow in replying, but I do always try and get back to everybody. So yeah, I just want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the event because it will happen, and I'm determined it will happen at the point where we're allowed to safely do so. We might be sat 2 meters apart, who knows, but we will do it later on, hopefully in the year. So the first date has been moved to September now, which I am hoping will go ahead. And Fertility and Altrui are going to support the second event. So there will be a second date coming. So if you are interested in that, and that will be a bigger scale version of this, but there'll also be workshops where we're talking about fears and emotions. There'll be clinics there talking about the practical side, including Altrui and Fertility. And there will also be the chance for you to build your own network of people, because not only is it great to have people who know what you're going through whilst you're going through treatment, but afterwards, when you become a parent, which is kind of the aim, it's then supporting you through the next stage, which is talking to your children about it, because it is a lifelong decision. It's not just a snapshot decision. And I think that's really important for people to talk about. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell from me. I'll be answering some questions later in the evening, but yeah, I just hope you really enjoy it, and please do keep feeding back in the chat and the Q&A if there's anything you want to ask, and we'll try and get to them as we go through.
Wonderful. Becky, thank you so much. And I'm just going to repeat, since the size of the room has tripled, a few of the technical sides of it. So as Becky said, we received a really high volume of questions, and first of all, thank you for trusting us with those, because they were really, really personal, and there are some of them which we just won't have time to cover. We wouldn't be doing them justice. So it does help us to know that you want those topics covered. After this session, we'll actually send out a little survey asking the topics that you'd like covered, because we may be able to do more sessions while the situation is still happening. Of course, then there's Becky's event happening later, but it helps us to know that. I will say that unfortunately for clinical side, where we had really a lot of questions, we won't be able to go into that. But Apricity is open 6 days a week right now. They handle everything to do with fertility care. So the questions that we got surrounding embryos, statistics, kind of diets that you should adopt while trying to conceive, and whether it's safe to conceive at this time, if you could direct those to Apricity, and we'll show you how after the webinar. That would be wonderful. But we have a fantastic panel of speakers today, and so we're really going to be focusing on sharing their stories and a few of the different phases of conception. And as Becky said, it's not as long as the real event, and we won't be able to see us and do the workshop part of it, which will be so meaningful. But we've tried really hard to bring a valuable evening, and I hope that you'll all enjoy it. For the questions, it would be great if you could use the Q&A feature. If you hover over the bottom, that would be that's the place to put them in. We'll try our best. And also, just because of this timing right now, I'll also mention that there was I'm sure most of you are aware, if you're in the UK, the HFEA made an announcement on May 1st regarding the opening of fertility clinics. And in case that was confusing for anyone, we'd just like to clear up what that means. So on May 11th in the UK, fertility clinics are able to apply to reopen. So the HFEA has set out their guidelines in order for clinics to reopen safely. So for them to do this, they have to apply to the HFEA and show how they're meeting those guidelines. And the HFEA should reply within 5 days. So the bottom line here is that They won't open on May 11th, but we are now speaking, we're talking about likely a matter of weeks and not a matter of months. They're not going to be at their full capacity. Likely, it's going to be quite reduced and staggered, but that is what that announcement means. And Apricity will be making an announcement on the announcement to explain if anyone has any questions. But given the timing, I thought it would be helpful to quickly highlight that. So it's with that, Becky, should we bring on the first speaker?
Yes, let's do that.
So this is.
Can I introduce Jana?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so just to give a bit of an introduction, so Jana Rupno is joining us today, and Jana is a fertility therapist, and she's joining us all the way from Texas in the US. So fingers crossed everything works. But I met Jana over a year ago now. I first listened to her on the Fertility podcast, and everything she was saying, hi Jana, just like really hit home. So Jana was talking about the grief that we go through as we have to try and think about using a donor and the loss of our own genetics. And I remember sitting in the car in tears listening to Jana talking about this, thinking, oh, this is how I've been feeling, and it just validated everything for me. So I reached out to Jana, we got in touch, we've done quite a few Insta lives together, and Jana's got a brilliant book as well, which I've looked through and I use, that kind of just talks you through all the different stages and the fears and emotions that you might have. So yeah, I'm delighted that Jana has agreed to join us today, because she just has some amazing insights into the world of donor conception. So I'll hand over to you, Jana.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that introduction, Becky. I really appreciate it. It's great being here today.
And thank you so much for joining us. I mean, Jana, you're a licensed professional counselor. You're an author of 3 Makes Baby, which is about talking to children about donor conception, and well, not just that, but parenting through donor conception. You have a podcast.
Yes.
You're also a psychotherapist. I mean, you.
Yes.
You really know your stuff.
I do a lot. Yeah. And the podcast is under the same name, 3 Makes Baby. So to make it easy for people to find information about that. And I've had over 25 interviews, I think we're going on now, with donor conceived individuals, parents through donor conception, embryo donation, all kinds of sperm donation. So there's lots of great information. You can tune into that podcast and listen. So yeah.
Wonderful. And as expected, we have a lot of questions for you. So I'm going to delve right in. So throughout the evening, we're kind of going to look through the process of donation, starting from a woman or a couple being told that they may need the help of a donor to conceive. And hearing this, especially if you're not expecting it, can be difficult. And I think it might be helpful if you could maybe outline some of the feelings or questions that people who hear that news might be going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they're not expecting to hear it, it can be very shocking. As you can imagine, there's a lot of disbelief around it, and they may not be ready to hear that news, and not ready to stop trying with their own gametes, with their own egg and sperm. They a lot of times they're angry at the doctor or person that told them that they should consider donor eggs. I've had so many people tell me that they got so mad at that first person that told them that, and maybe they went to another doctor or clinic to get a second opinion, which if you're uncertain about whether that's the path that's right for you, it's not a bad idea to get a second opinion. But yeah, it's a lot of confusion, I think, is the primary feeling that people have. Is when they feel confused, they're having to confront this issue of genetic loss. And what does this mean to me that I cannot use my own genetics to have a child? Maybe they never thought of having a child any other way. So it's quite a new concept. And I believe, it's a core loss to lose that genetic, to be able to pass on your genes to your child. This can be a core loss for a lot of people, not for everyone, but for many people it is. And so it can hit people pretty hard. And it varies, some people, it's not as big of a loss to. So there really are lots of variety of feelings around it. But primarily what I hear if people are coming to counseling is that shock and denial piece. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you bring up grief, because the biggest question that we've gotten for today's webinar is about the loss of genetics and how to deal with that grief. So, but we'll ask this to Becky as well. But how do you make space for grief over genetic loss? Do you have any strategies or any tools, any tips?
Yeah. It's so good to first recognize that you're feeling grief. I think that's the first step. As I know Becky has spoken to this many times, that, and many women feel this way, and men, that they don't realize they're grieving and they're very confused about their feelings. And so recognizing it is huge. And then just to be able to connect with those painful feelings. Again, confusion is a big part of it. So connecting with the feelings and being able to go there is hard, but you can talk to a therapist, a friend. My book also guides people through exercises that help you identify your feelings around grief, because sometimes you don't know what those feelings really are. So, that's what I would suggest is using those exercises to really help narrow down what your feelings are, and you'll feel less confused.
And maybe Becky, you can talk about that from your perspective as well.
Yes, absolutely. As Jenna said, I think I didn't realize I was grieving at the time. I would sort of say to myself, "Oh, pull yourself together. What's wrong with you?" And I didn't realize the impact to my mental health. And to be honest, I think I bottled a lot of my feelings up, and I didn't have resources such as this to reach out for, or I couldn't find them myself to talk about it. So I actually found, I think, a lot of my emotion came out later on down the line. But by that time I had the girls, and I could start to kind of see it. I had some more certainty, I suppose, and I found the whole unknown aspect really difficult to deal with. And then I'll talk later a little bit around the worries and the concerns I had at first. But yeah, I think it's just recognizing that you are grieving, that it's valid, and that it can be a big deal for people. So try not to brush it under the carpet. Talk about it to people who understand. And I found counselling really, really useful as well. And I kind of just went to counselling because I was struggling so much with everything else surrounding work and IVF and everything. And it was in those sessions where I started to then say things out loud that I didn't think I could say to close family or friends, just things that I wanted to talk about. And that was a huge weight that was lifted. And so, yeah, I think I started to work through it in counselling, but actually it's post having the girls that I think I've really recognised how big it was.
Just continuing on the topic of feelings, of what you might be going through, we had a few people write in with a really similar question, and it was about anger, but it was at themselves. And they were saying that for one reason or another, that they felt that they'd waited too long, and that this was the reason why they might come to egg donation. So do you have any ideas, how I mean, the question was, how do I forgive myself for this? Is there anything that you could say on digesting those sorts of feelings?
Yeah. It's a really good example of what grief really looks like. It's kind of a case example of that. And I think that it's really helpful for people to realize that part of grieving, you're going to go through all these emotions, anger and regrets. Regrets come with loss, and, anger comes with grief. So they're normal feelings. So one, being really compassionate with yourself when you're having these feelings and these emotions, knowing that it's human and it's normal. And I think that's really important. And then acceptance too, acceptance of what is today, and also what has already passed. And then, that you can accept all those parts of it. That's when you're sort of coming through grief and walking through it onto the other side of grief, is acceptance. There is no way to rush it. There's no way to force it. It is something you do have to feel. And, but yeah, I think compassion and acceptance these are easy words to use, and I realize the process of that is much more difficult. So again, having that counselor or someone to help you walk through that process and sort it all out is so helpful, because it's a lot to sort through.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh yes, sorry, go ahead, Becky.
Just touching on that, I mean, I had some feelings of what have I done to deserve this? Is this something I've done in the past that I'm being kind of punished for now? And all of those thoughts went through my head in the early days. And I think looking back, I was trying to think about what it was about, a loss of control, because I suddenly felt like I couldn't control the situation. So, and I was trying to put kind of a reason for it and trying to give it a reason as to why it happened. And I think that's when you're going through fertility struggles, the whole loss of control is one of the hardest things to deal with. We try and look at what we can control, and then if a cycle fails, for example, we then go, oh, what was it? Was it because I didn't have acupuncture this time? Was it because I didn't do this, or did I ate this, or I did too much exercise? And I just think we need to be, like Jana said, compassionate to ourselves and just understand that there are a lot of things, especially when it comes to fertility, that we can't control. Nobody can have a crystal ball and see into the future and see that your AMH or whatever is going to be a certain level at a certain point in time. I think it's just accepting that that's where life has brought you, and that's where life brought me. I mean, I could have tried 5 years earlier and might have had a different result, but now I've got the girls, I can kind of be on the other side of that and look back and say, I wouldn't be where I am today, and that's just unimaginable. So yeah, I think it's part of the whole unknown element as well. I think I remember that so well. So I just wanted to give a bit of kind of perspective from someone who's been there.
And speaking of the other side, a lot of the questions for you, Jana, and I'm just going to say them one after another, are raising donor-conceived kids. So is it advisable to tell them that they're donor-conceived? How should you tell them? When should you tell them? What way can you tell them? Obviously, this is something that you cover in your book, and yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so if you can imagine, when I would see couples going through donor conception, usually they had just found out, they were having all these confusion feelings. We've talked about grief and bewilderment, and to get to the part where you actually have a baby in your arms and now you're raising it's really hard for them to get there mentally. And so, I really thought parents need a resource. They need something after they go home and get pregnant, and hopefully, everything works out, and that they can have and read. They usually don't come back to counseling at that point. Sometimes they do. So I wrote 3 Makes Baby. This is what the cover of it looks like. And basically I talk about the first half of it is how you prepare for donor conception. It's an emotional preparation. And it talks about some of the concerns you brought up, which is, how do we tell, how are we going to feel? How are our children going to feel? And so then the second half of it is how you tell, when you tell, when you can start to speak about donor conception, and you can start right from the beginning. And you can even start talking about it when you're pregnant if you want, and just to get used to hearing yourself speak about it, to get comfortable with saying it out loud. So it just becomes natural, because at first things like this can feel awkward, and that's normal. And then you change your dialogue as the children grow through the different stages of life. You'll use different language, and you'll expand upon what you've already started. And that's kind of what's great about starting early, is you set this foundation that's usually very positive. There's not a whole lot of detail you have to go into. And then as they grow, you can get into the more challenging aspects of it and have that good foundation for them. So.
And there was just one more question, which I think is probably one you get a lot, Jana, is what if my child is upset when I tell them they were donor conceived? What if I don't feel like the real parent?
Yeah, and those are 2 out of the 5 concerns that I outlined in my book. Your child's potential feelings, and then how you will feel. Will you feel like the real parent? And one of them is a little easier than the other. I think feeling like a real parent, we can point to the attachment process and realize that parenting is about attachment, not necessarily genetics, and that this is something that evolves over time, and that you just can't replace a parent. If someone's raised you, that's who's raised you, and that's your mom or dad. So that I go into. But the second piece about how my child will feel is a little more complex because we don't know. Every child is different. They can feel a range of things from completely fine to grateful to not real happy about it. So we just don't know what your child is going to feel, but we know that there's a range of emotions, and the better prepared you are as a parent to handle those challenges, the more you can just navigate it in a way that is healthy for your family. So I think that's the key, is being prepared for that child who's maybe very upset about it, and then hopefully it will fall somewhere beneath that when it actually comes to reality.
Wonderful. Jana, it's such a pleasure to have someone as experienced as you in this event, and thank you so much for answering the questions. We're going to try and answer a few more at the end, but we'll also be sharing Jana's details after the webinar. She's a brilliant website, social media presence, book. So yeah, thank you so much, Jana.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to move over to Alison Bagshaw, who is very humble, but she is one of the leading egg donation experts in the UK. She has incredible experience in fertility and, of course, finding donors and matching donors. So Alison is the founder of Altrui Egg Donation, and we'd love to hear a little bit about your experience and why you founded Altrui.
Okay, so it's interesting listening to Becky and Jana, because I remember working in the NHS in fertility, and I was permanently seeing people who were really struggling with the idea of egg donation or sperm donation. And there was one that particularly stood out, and that was someone who was told in clinic that she needed an egg donor, and in the second breath was told, well, you've got to go to Spain. And she just couldn't figure this. She kept thinking, well, why Spain? I could go on holiday in Spain, but why on earth would I go for donation in Spain? And it was all such a shock. And I really began to think, actually, we needed to find a way to get people help here in the UK who wanted to stay in the UK for to find a donor over here. So we started to think, actually, what would I really want if I needed the help of a donor? What would I want? And one of it was that I wanted someone to really take care of me, hear what I wanted, what I felt about this. And this is where Jana has said things as well. Actually recognize the grief. I think I would want someone who could find somebody who I would feel comfortable with. And so therefore I started to think, actually, how on earth do you do this? And I was working in fertility, as I've said. So for me, what was really key was to get the idea that actually people needed to know that help was needed, and to ask people indirectly. And therefore, myself and my husband, we started Altrui. And we started very humbly with clothes pegs and A4 paper on the kitchen table, trying to get people to come forward and offer their help. And yes, we've grown, but one of the key things that we felt was really important were that a donor was looked after going through this process. It's a huge ask for a donor to do this for somebody they don't know. It's different if you know the person that you're going to be helping, but when you don't know, you really want someone who's going to be your advocate. You might never have been to clinic before. You need someone who's going to look after you going through that process. But equally, for people needing help and receiving the help of an egg donor, I think we felt it's really important that they had information about that donor, more information than just that eye colour and hair colour. We wanted it to be that there was a connection made between these two women, or two men and it might be, but some sort of connection where that donor would donate to one recipient or one recipient couple, so that recipient couple got the very best chance of a pregnancy. So what we do is one-to-one donation, and that we felt was really important. So the matching was key, one-to-one donation was key, and that means that the pregnancy rate could be the best it could possibly be. And at the moment, it is actually 79% pregnancy rate, which is really high. It actually gives people a really good chance. And the chance it also gives people is to have a genetically related sibling for the first child if they get pregnant. If they don't get pregnant, they've got the backup, potentially, of blastocysts to go back to. And that, we felt, was the very best way forward. So as a result of those early days, we've just got to the point where we are very keen, and with the help of Fertility, we enthusiastically go forward and try and get people to come forward and help. And these women who do this are incredibly kind. I think you'll meet one this evening, one of our donors. But to do this, as I said, for somebody they don't know, it really takes a very special person. And these are the women that we find and we match. And as a recipient, you get a lot of information, because one of the things is this uncertainty, this unknownness about who's helping you, about the donor. You have fantasies, you have ideas, but actually to try and make it as smooth a transition as possible from plan A to plan B, we felt that if you've got a lot of information about that donor, it would just help. And it's also there for you to tell a child in the future, when you felt it was ready as a parent, a little bit about the donor who helped them conceive, the child. So those were the reasons that we started. And it's the best thing we've ever done, really, just simply to be able to help people find a donor in the UK. And I'm passionate about the UK because of the protection that you get from the licensing authority, and also how we can look after donors here in the country. So that's a little bit about my journey into donation.
Amazing. So, and I mean, to get to this stage, you've really done a lot of awareness on egg donation. I remember you saying that when you started, you said, I know that women in the UK would donate if they knew it was something that they could do. And as you said, we'll be hearing from one of the wonderful egg donors, Leanne, later, about her experience. One of the questions that you get asked a lot, Alison, is about the matching. So how do you match?
Okay, so matching is there's a lot of factors that go into matching, and it is not our decision to go ahead. We actually try and find a donor for you, and we look at what's important to you. So, registering with us, we would have a long call with you. We'd find out what really mattered to you in a donor, and everybody is absolutely unique. Somebody might want a donor with a particular heritage, or somebody might find that for them, the grief of not being able to pass on their genetic material in terms of their freckles or their curly hair, it's really about trying to find out what would make this easier for you as a recipient to go ahead with donation. And that is what we listen to. So it's about the overall person. So, and it's also trying to get the right person in the right place at the right time. And that also goes into the factors. So it's about the clinics, the different clinics we work with. They all have different clinical protocols, what's going to work for a donor. We have to look at the logistics. But essentially, the matching is about trying to find the right person for you, and giving you as much information about that person, and then you have a choice about whether or not you go ahead. And if that donor doesn't feel quite a connection, or you don't feel quite ready for this, that's fine. We'll find another, we'll keep going, and we'll keep looking for a donor for you. So for us, it's really about getting the right match.
You spoke about being ready. So the other question that we got a lot today was, how should I know when I'm ready to actually go to someone like you, to someone who actually does the donor finding?
I think both Becky and Jana have said it is a real process. It is, you go through a grieving. It's like looking at something and then backing off, and then going a bit closer and then backing off. And eventually you get to a point where you put your feet in the water or your toes in the water, and you think, actually, perhaps I'll just make one phone call. That's okay. Just one phone call is fine. Just recognize it is a process. It isn't something that you're suddenly going to think, oh, right, I'm going to do this. And actually, it's probably much better for you as a person and you as a family, potential family, that you do have this time to grieve, to adjust, to come to it slowly, that there should be this time that you have. And what I have found is in clinics, very often it's a solution to a problem, a medical issue or a medical problem, and the solution is go and get an egg donor. Well, yeah, but that is, gosh, the words just get an egg donor is really, I mean, there's so much to this and there's so much emotion attached to it. And time really is important. So it's about the timing, and only you will know when it feels right to go ahead with an egg donor. And I don't think anybody else can make that decision for you. It's just something you probably feel, yeah, I think I'm probably ready for this. But the other thing too is not to be ready for it and expect it to happen overnight. It does take time. It takes time to find a donor, and it also takes time for that donor to be screened up. So, you know, it's just that thing of giving yourself the space, but not recognizing as soon as you've given it and you're ready to go, that's it, you're going to get a donor, because it does take that you know, period of working donors up to this point.
And so what is the process? So if someone comes to you, then what happens?
People come to us, and then we answer all their questions that they might have on the phone, like I said, putting your feet in the water, and then send some information. And we're here at any time. We encourage you to ring in and just ask whatever you want to ask. Then we ask you to register, and we get, if you want to go ahead with us and if you would like a donor, then we ask you to register. We get a lot of information about you, if you feel able to give it, and your partner, if you have one. It doesn't matter if you haven't got a partner. We help single women, we help gay couples. It's really not an issue for us at all. And then after you've registered and we've got everything in from you, we have a conversation for about 3/4 of an hour. And that's when I really find out about you as people, who you are, what makes you tick, what's important to you, what are your values, and that begins to get that sense of being able to see that person, that donor who starts to come up through us and start to think, yeah, that's the donor, that's the connection. And then we give you the information, and then you decide whether or not you want to go ahead. Then I refer you into clinic, and hopefully the process will start to unfold for you.
Great. We have so many more questions, but I think I have time for just one more, but we will have a question slot at the end. So Alison, obviously this is quite a particular time, difficult for a lot of people. And I know some are wondering what it means in terms of donors. So how has the COVID-19 situation, have you seen positivity, negativity? Are people pulling out? How has that affected a donation?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because we sort of initially thought, oh, COVID, this is it. This is going to really make a big, you know, a massive difference to people coming forward. But it really hasn't. The donors that we have already in the process who are matched up and ready for some form of appointment or treatment cycle, every single one of them has said that they're happy to wait. They're happy to wait for the recipient couple. And that's the difference. This is such a personal side of it. They're happy to wait, and they will wait as long as necessary. So those are absolutely fine. At Altrui, we're a small team. There's only 3 of us, and Sarah, who brings donors in, she's been saying that there are 2 different responses to the ones we're talking to at the moment. A lot of people feel they just want to help, and it doesn't matter whether it's donating cans of tin tomatoes to the local, bank, or whether it's donating eggs. I'm sorry about the sort of 2 sides, but that's the number of people who are actually we're talking to at the moment. There's a lot of people who just want to help in any way they can. Then there's the others who are saying, well, let's just wait till COVID is a little bit further. I've got a lot of children at home. We're really busy, but I really am interested. Will you pick this up with me? So at the moment, and with the help of Julia here, we have got a really healthy number of people who we're working with at the moment, and it does take us time to work these really kind people up to the point where they feel ready to go ahead and be matched with the recipient.
Amazing. Alison, thank you so much. There are still questions that we haven't answered, but we are going to take a little 5-minute break. So if you want to use the loo, fill up your cup of tea, get a snack, we're just going to be chatting for until 6:40. And after the break, we will have 3 more wonderful speakers, of course, including the brilliant Becky, i.e. Defining Mum, which is going to share her story. We're going to hear from Leanne, an Altrui egg donor. And we're also going to hear from Kate, who is a donor-conceived adult. So we've got a lot coming up. And yeah, if you just want to take these few minutes to just maybe stretch your legs or get a little snack. Alison, thank you so much.
That's okay. I'm probably going to just go and get myself some water.
Yeah, I'm gonna do.
I'm not sure how to turn off the camera.
So actually, I might be able to do it for you. Let me see. Okay. Yeah. So shall I stop your video and mute you?
If you could just stop me for a moment and bring me back on, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. I'm also just going to.
So yeah, I was going to ask really quick.
Oh yeah, of course.
I have answered some of the questions in the question Q&A box. It looks like there's more coming in. Do you want to go through and choose the ones that you'd prefer? I know some of them are directed to Altrui. I'm here. I have a moment I can answer. So
amazing. Yeah, that Jana, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, very good.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to choose, I'm not sure which ones you've answered already, but
yeah, I'm actually answering one on the bottom now that is directed toward me that says that she was told over and over that once the baby was in her arms, she would forget all the pain of infertility and the loss of her genetics, but it's not true. If anything, the baby reminds her of the fact that he is the product of my partner and a stranger, and that I just carried the baby. The issue of epigenetics doesn't seem to help my mindset. Any thoughts on this? Absolutely, yeah. So, and I can answer that while I type it. Basically, that's very common. It's grief, and grief doesn't go away necessarily when you become pregnant or have a baby. It's normal for it to continue to come up. I usually tell my women that I deal with to expect it to after they have a baby, to not be surprised if they have these feelings. So that way, when they do have them, they don't feel guilt on top of grief, because those two compounded emotions can be very overwhelming. And, so I think it's, again, walking through. A lot of women at this point will go back and through my book and start walking through those exercises again. Some people feel this at the beginning. Some people don't feel it till baby's here. Some people don't feel it until 2 years after baby's here. So everyone is so individual, but it is grieving, and it is a process of letting go. And that is something that you can continue to work on. So I kind of answered that. Hopefully you heard that answer. And I'll type a little bit of message to you as well. So
amazing, Jana, thank you so much. And I also will mention in the post-webinar communications, if you'd like a recording of this, we will be issuing a private link. So it means that you can view it on YouTube, but only if you have the link for it. So in case there's anything that you would like to hear again, get in touch with us and we can sort that out. Okay, Alison, I'm gonna bring you back up. And okay, so it's 6:40, and I am absolutely delighted to introduce Becky, without which this event would not be possible. So obviously Becky is a huge voice in the TTC community in the UK. She's got a fantastic blog on fertility. She talks about loss, about donor conception, in a really honest but also uplifting way. So we're so excited to be working with you, Becky. As soon as we shared the Eventbrite link with you, I mean, overnight we had about 30 registrations. I mean, my phone was going off throughout the night. And what do you think that says about your community? And do you think that maybe there's a lack of known resources available when it comes to donor conception?
Yeah, I think goes to show how much it's needed, and how people have got real appetite to want to find out more. And yeah, I think in terms of resources, I mean, we have the Donor Conception Network in the UK, which has got heaps and heaps of resource. But what I really struggled to find myself when I was going through it was a reality, and actually wanted to see somebody like who's been through it, and that's what I wanted to show. And I think that's where people find that connection. They kind of want to look beyond making the decision what life could be like, but also I try not to paint it I'm trying to paint it in a way that shows the reality and the challenges as well. So it's not all singing and dancing. There are a lot of difficult conversations to have, but I try to show in an honest way how I feel about them, and how I'm learning. I'm always trying to learn more and listen to different perspectives, and how really I think what we're all doing is trying to be the best parents we can be. And I think that's what it shows as well. I mean, the questions that are being asked, it just shows that people really, really care about making the right decision, and care about what they do moving forward with their children, and how they can be the best parents they can be. So yeah, I think it's brilliant. I love the Instagram community, and just like there's a few people who connected with me right at the very beginning who now have children, and it's so rewarding to see people go through that process. So yeah, I think the community is amazing, and I think it's just needed. And if anyone out there is looking at this, and you're not on Instagram, and you think, oh, I don't really want my friends and family to know that I'm following these people, loads of people set up anonymous accounts. So choose whatever name you want, and then it just gives you that way to interact with people. So that there are some really interesting names on Instagram actually, and a few that are on tonight, but it just allows you to have that network. And I also think as well, something that I didn't have when I was kind of making decisions myself was something to show my family and my friends, because for me it was an alien concept when someone talked to me about donation, and for them it was equally that sort of like huge thing that they've never heard of. And so it gives you the opportunity to almost say, look, go and have a look at this resource, have a look at Defining Mum, and it just gives them a chance to get an insight. So I know there's a few people I think have got parents or family or friends on the line tonight who are kind of just listening in, and I think it's great just to get that insight, because it's a massive thing that they're going through, having to accept and go and kind of go through. And ultimately, when the child comes into the family, we've all got a role to play in being open with them, talking to them about the conception, because one of the big things I talk about is how I want there to be no shame around their conception, no secrecy. I don't want the girls to feel like we're ashamed of how they came to be. We're really proud of them, and I want that to be their normal. And I think that's really important when we talk about telling the child that they have that right from the start. They've never known any different. And I know Kate later will talk about how her parents have spoken to her as well. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question.
No, that's wonderful. I think Instagram for the trying to conceive community is so important. I've never seen so many kind of raw diaries, because there are so many ups and downs of the journeys, and it gives you a really visual way to document, you know, whether it's a day of tears, or it's a day where you just look at you know, all the needles, and you just want to capture that and be able to show someone else, or keep it to yourself and just share it with other people. It's really a really lovely and supportive community. I know you mentioned a little bit about this in the beginning, but I think new people have come in. So your story, you know, how did you come to donor conception? And yeah, a little bit about that would be great.
So it's, in a nutshell, really, it's hard to condense something that lasted kind of over 2 years into a few sentences. But yeah, I was 27 when I was we'd started trying for a baby, and about 6 months into trying, I was kind of pushing for some tests because I kind of just had a feeling something wasn't right. Finally, when I finally got the test from the GP, I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure. So my anti-Müllerian hormone was very, very low for my age, probably more like the the levels you'd see for someone in their sort of late 40s. So I was told I'd have to go straight for IVF if we were to have any chance of conceiving, and things happened quite quickly. Actually, we self-funded our first cycle, and yeah, we didn't get many eggs, which was expected, but I actually got pregnant on our first cycle. So I thought, wow, easier than I thought. But sadly, after 7 weeks, we had a scan, and it was a miscarriage. So that hit me pretty hard. But I felt hopeful because I thought, well, I've got pregnant. They said it probably wouldn't happen. I've done it. So even though at the back of my head I'd kind of read up on donation, I didn't think it would need to apply to me. I thought, well, I'm 27, my egg quality must be great, so let's just find that golden egg. And then we went through quite a few cycles in quick succession. So we had 4 more cycles of IVF with my eggs, each one with a negative result. One of them we didn't even get to transfer. So, and I think it was each cycle I kind of started to accept a little bit more the possibility that if I really wanted to be a mum, donation was probably going to be the best option to give us success. But I still wasn't quite ready to make that decision. And it was sort of after the 4th cycle I started to really think a bit more about what would it give me if I was to use a donor, and what would I be losing? And I thought, obviously, I'm not going to have the kind of the vision of a child I've always thought would be like a mini version of me. And then I kind of realised I'd still get all of the other things. So I'd get to carry the child, I'd get the feeling of pregnancy. And I know with sperm donation, it's slightly different because you don't get that element. But then I think beyond that, it's very similar in the fact that I would then get to raise the child. And I get to do all of the things that I'd imagined doing. So all the things I do today, sort of making their breakfast, getting up with them in the night, playing with them, once things reopen again, taking them to nursery, Mila's starting school in September. And I feel all of the emotions that I thought I would feel being a mum. So I get very emotional at the thought of Mila starting school, the pride I feel, and yeah, and I started to think, actually, I could still be the mum that I want to be. And I suppose what I was doing was accepting that I'd have to give up my genetics for that to happen. And this was all kind of subconsciously. I didn't realise this is what was going through my mind, but we started to look into it more. And I actually found somebody online in a forum who had used an egg donor, and we became friends, which is part of the reason why I share the story now. And it was seeing her and the relationship between her and her son that it was like a light bulb moment for me, where I thought, actually, I'm not looking at her thinking she's not genetically related to that child. I'm looking at her thinking she's his mum, and he just adored her. There was no reason for anybody to think otherwise, and that just made it feel almost exciting in a way, because after so many failed cycles, I was thinking it would never happen. And so, yeah, we started to look into donation. And to be honest, I don't think we went too in depth in terms of researching the different options. I didn't know you could have the sort of the length of donor information that you can get today from some places. But we were led to Prague in the Czech Republic, and that's where we had our treatment, and numerous reasons for that, kind of time scales, cost, but also we just felt we wanted to do something differently, and we went out there, and they matched us pretty quickly with someone who on paper was pretty much me, but we don't know much else beyond physical characteristics. So yeah, we haven't got a great deal to pass on to the girls in terms of information, but from that donor we had 5 embryos. First embryo was put back, that was successful, and I had Mila in 2016. We went back a year later and I had 2 embryos put back, mainly because they froze them in pairs, which is something we didn't know had happened. So it was kind of a twist of fate, and both took. So, and then I had Eska and Lena in 2018. So yeah, now I'm a mum of 3. And yeah, I think looking back now, I wish I kind of could have told myself what it'd be like, but you have to go through those processes, and it just takes time, and it's different for everybody. Some people come to the decision quite quickly. Some it will never be right for them. But I just hope by sharing, it just gives people the opportunity to see how your feelings can change over time.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Becky. I'm going to go into some of the questions there. As you can expect, there were quite a few. So you touched on this a little bit. How do you cope as a donor recipient with questions about your children? Do you find that it's something that comes up?
I would say if I wasn't talking about it so openly, I don't think it would come up at all, to be honest. I think people see me as their mum. So I'm kind of thinking of examples sort of when I'm taking the girls into nursery and seeing all of the other mums, and I don't think anyone would ask questions. And truly, I believe people see what they want to see. So I've had people say, oh yeah, she looks like you. And mostly it's they look like Matt, my husband, because they really, really look like Matt. But I think people see the relationship, and that in that sense, they don't question anything. It was a worry I had. I worried about whether people would kind of strikingly see a difference between me and my child and think something. But I think when you start to build that relationship, you then see motherhood totally differently, and parenthood, whether you're a father with sperm donation. I think it's the time spent together and the nurturing which actually builds the bonds. And I would say that quite often the girls are referred to as being just like me in terms of how they talk and how they act, particularly Mila and her sense of humour. So yeah, I think it's just thinking beyond the physical side of things, which is what the first thing I thought of. I have had the odd time where somebody's made a comment, or asked a question. It's usually someone who knows about the donation, and it's just the way in which they've used the terminology. So I've had two people say, also, my daughter Mila has really curly hair. They said, oh, so did she get the curls from the mum? And that was a moment of, ooh. But I just kind of put myself together and said, well, I'm the mum, but they got them, yeah, she must have got them from the donor because there's no curls on that side. So I think it's just known that some people just don't know how to word things sometimes, and the intention is good, but they're just curious. And that's mostly what I get in terms of questions about it. It's curiosity. But it's why I want to talk and raise awareness, because I want to give people who may not be so comfortable that place to signpost people to if you want to find out a bit more about it. And I want people to feel comfortable. I want the girls to feel comfortable talking about it when they're older. I don't want them to be in a world kind of how we are now, where we were 5 years ago, where I went through it, where nobody knows that this route to parenthood exists, because actually it's a lot more common than you think. It's just that people don't tend to talk about it.
And speaking of, the girls know that about the donor, is that right? I mean, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've always been open, and that's one of the things we were adamant from the start, that we would never want them to find out through a family member or needing to know some medical history. Then we have to say, well, actually, we don't know that medical history because you're not genetically related to me. So I wanted to be open, and I found that talking about it while they were babies actually really helped me, because they couldn't talk back. I was able to get emotional because I'd feel so much gratitude to the donor, and I'd feel so much love to them. And you have this feeling of you just want to protect them. So sometimes I'm a bit overwhelmed with emotion around the fact that they will have to process some of this information as they grow. But I just know that the best thing to do is to talk about it so that they never know any different. And I've got a book, I think we're going to share the link in the resources, called Happy Together Children's Book, which is a great way of talking to them about where they came to be. So I read that story with Mila, and I've shared on my blog some of the responses that she's given. So she created a mythical dragon at the end of it, I think because it just wasn't interesting enough for her. She wanted to. And yeah, she talks about it now. So she said to my mum, yeah, Nana, do you know, like, there was a kind lady who gave her eggs, and because mummy's eggs were broken and they were put with daddy's seed, and then I was put in mummy's tummy. And she finished that story off with, and yeah, mummy and daddy really wanted me. And that was the bit that she really kind of talked about, and that maybe I just had to disappear because I was in tears talking about it. But yeah, I just want them to feel positively about it. And it's not easy. I don't kind of say it. You do get emotional. When I first received the book, I cried my eyes out. I could feel a lump in my throat. But I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And obviously Eska and Lena are 2 now, so I'll start to read it with them as well. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's the right thing to do, I believe. And I think they will have more trust in us for being open as well. So
Becky, that's a wonderful. Thank you so much. Just one final thing, because we had some questions on I think it was donor traceability, and I think you mentioned that you were going to be doing a blog about it. So,
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just mentioned, so yeah, donor anonymity is something that is a difficult topic because there is a lot of kind of different feelings about anonymous donors. To be honest, there's a lot that I didn't know back when we went to Prague that I do know now. But so the girls haven't got the option to trace our donor in terms of because it is an anonymous donation from the Czech Republic. But we plan to support them if they do want to try and find out more. So there's DNA testing nowadays, etc. But because there's so many different things surrounding this, I've decided to write a blog just reflecting on how we plan to support the girls. So that should be out later on this week. So rather than going into too much detail when we've not got a lot of time, yeah, just look out for that if that's one of your questions.
Perfect. And I think one of the questions that brought that up, I loved the way the person signed off, and she said, I remind myself that both roots share one very important thing in common. There are women out there willing to give the most generous, selfless gift to another woman, and that is a positive, special thing. So I thought that was a really nice way to end the question. And it's with that sentiment that I bring up our wonderful donor, Leanne, who is not just an egg donor, but a real advocate on egg donation and getting that information out there. So Leanne, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
I know you've donated a few years ago. You've spoken to lots of other women who have gone on to donate. You've made lifelong friends through egg donation. You've helped researchers understand more about egg donation. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey?
So I first heard about egg donation simply driving to work one day, heard an advert on the radio, kind of stopped me in my thoughts a little bit, and didn't even realise these things existed, or there was that sort of route to parenthood, to be honest. Having had 2 children of my own, and first sort of birth wasn't particularly nice, you take it for granted a little bit, and I think when you've got your own children, it's a love you can't describe. So having heard on the radio that there's ladies out there really, really struggling to have children, I think it stopped me in my thoughts a little bit and made me realise, that there's a lot of people out there that take fertility for granted. Having heard this advert on the radio, I decided to do a little bit of research and discovered Altrui. So I made contact with them, and that's when the journey started, really.
Amazing. And sorry, where have your questions gone? Sorry, there are so many of them for you. A lot of people were wondering how you feel about the gift and about attachment. So do you have any attachment to the donor child?
Not at all, no. To me, the child isn't mine, never has been, never will be. I've just helped, a couple, a lady, whomever, to have a family of their own. So I don't see an attachment issue at all. That there is no attachment.
And likewise, we've been getting questions about how would you feel if the child wanted to meet you in the future?
I'd be happy for them to. I think mainly for curiosity, but just to know, that they're fit, healthy, well, and amongst a happy family, which I'm sure they are. So no, I'd be more than happy for them to locate me if they wish.
And how do you feel about the recipients when you think about them?
I probably think about the recipient more than the child, actually. Just to know what they've gone through. I mean, having heard Becky's story, there's lots of things, even from a donor's perspective, that I'd never even thought of with what a recipient's potentially going through. It's to know that things have worked for them, that they're happy and that they're healthy too, and that, you know, everything that they've sort of longed and wished for, they've got.
And how did you choose Altrui for donation? What was that like?
For me, Altrui are so personal, and I think when I first got in contact with Altrui, I felt like I knew everybody, even though I hadn't met them. The communication from them, the personal touches they gave, you know, constantly checking in to make sure we were okay, and also, although I didn't know the recipient, I felt like I knew them. It was good to hear that Altrui are talking to me as the donor and them as the recipient at the same time. It kind of feels like a family unit without even, you know, meeting these people. It's a closeness, I think, that although you say you've never met them, but Altrui make you feel part of that close network. And for me as a donor, that was important. You know, those regular words of encouragement and praise and wisdom and checking in to make sure we were okay. Always there for us as well if we'd got any queries, no questions were silly. Lots of things, you know, come across a donor's mind, and you ask those questions, they put you at ease. They don't make you feel like you're asking silly questions. That was the main reason for Altrui. And as I say, I've made some fabulous friends and contacts out of it, and I'm a true believer that they really are a good people.
It's interesting that you talk about the personal touch, because this is something we hear sadly a lot about in both treatment and donor side, that sometimes people who go through it feel it's not personal, and it was kind of, you know, you're in and then you're out, and how that doesn't obviously feel very nice at all. So I'm wondering if maybe you could give some examples of how the journey was personal.
So I had regular messages from them, regular phone calls, even down to little things like the night before egg collection. You know, I was getting a little message saying, "We're thinking of you. You're doing a fabulous thing. Make sure you've got plenty of drink with you for tomorrow. Let us know you're okay. Let us know you're on the train safely." You never ever felt on your own. It was always like they were with you, even though directly they weren't. But there was always that words of encouragement. And as I say, if there was anything that was worrying, which most of it wasn't, because it's always been so clear and concise from the beginning, that they were approachable to ask if you needed to. There was always somebody there to speak to. You'd always got somebody's telephone number or contact details. You know, at any time of the night, if you'd got queries or questions, somebody would be there to answer it.
This isn't a question, but a message from someone, which I think is nice to share, and what a lot of people feel towards you. They said, not a question, just a huge thank you on behalf of this community to the donor who's speaking. You have a golden heart.
Thank you.
So, I'd love to hear, you know, I think a lot of recipients are so curious to hear what is going through the donor's mind. You know, how do they feel about egg donation? What would you say to the recipient, or to people who are thinking about egg donation?
I would definitely say it's the proudest, most rewarding thing I've ever done. I'm quite open about being an egg donor. I talk about it all the time. I would encourage anybody that's got any feelings of potentially wanting to do it or wanting more information to certainly come forwards and have a chat with Altrui, or, you know, any of us that are willing to answer any questions. You know, even little things like dispelling the myth of things that you hear. You know, majority of it isn't true, but it's putting that mind at rest, that to definitely come forwards. It's the most wonderful thing you can feel, that you've helped somebody achieve having a family of their own and experiencing that love like you are as a parent, you know, that I have as a parent myself with my children.
I think, sorry, I'll just jump in here, because the last time we spoke, I did this with crying. I'm going to do it without crying today, but I just wanted to say, just as a recipient, how I don't think there's much else in life that can be donated that is so life-changing. And just thank you, because without people who are willing to do this, like, I wouldn't have the girls today, and it makes me just really emotional. And I think having heard you speak, it's just made me think, I mean, I've always thought about the donor, but it's just made me think in an even deeper way about her. And I wish I could kind of pass on my thanks to her. And I don't think there's ever anything I could say that will match up to how thankful I am, but it really is life-changing, and just the greatest gift. So yeah, thank you, Leanne.
Thanks for your lovely comments, Becky. It's really nice, and it's lovely to hear your side of it too.
And just to finish this part off, I can't believe we're already almost at 7:10. We're going through so quickly, and we still have so many questions. Perhaps both for Alison and Leanne, does the donor get to find out if their donation resulted in a successful birth?
Leanne?
So I've found out with mine, yes. I have had successful births. I think if you're quite open that you'd like to know that news, and the recipient are quite happy to let you know that news, then yes, they will tell you that whether it's successful.
And just from my side, I think it's really important. It's one of the things that I felt was part of the donor's journey, was to know what had happened, you know, whether or not there is going to be a child out there that might potentially want contact in the long-term future. But more than anything, it's a huge gift. It's a huge ask for somebody, like I've said, that doesn't know you. And I think it completes the circle, as it were. So it's donors don't want to intrude. They don't want to be, as Leanne's saying, they don't want to be part of your family. They just want to know they've helped. And they want to know what has happened as a result of that. So we do tell donors whether or not someone's pregnant, and whether or not, and they have a legal right to know that, and whether or not there's a live birth. But some places don't tell donors that.
I think from a donor's perspective, it's nice to know whether it's worked, you know, for us to come forward and sort of put ourselves through treatment as well. And it is a bit of a commitment, you know, for us to do that. The most rewarding thing is to know that it's worked. That's what we're doing it for, in the hope that it works. So to find out that it has makes it even more worthwhile.
Mm.
Leanne, thank you so much once again. We still have questions, and we're going to try and leave a little bit of room at the end. But for now, I am going to bring up Kate, who is a donor-conceived adult. She's known about her origins for as long as she can remember, and she's always been comfortable talking about her about donor conception, and she occasionally speaks to in the media, and also to the Donor Conception Network on donor conception issues. So let me just find Kate. Here we go. And let me bring Kate up. Hi, Kate. Can you hear us?
Hi. Oh, I've left my other background on. Please bear with me while I remove this. Yeah, sorry. There we go.
We're all picturing us being there.
Hi.
Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for joining us today. It would just be great to hear a little bit about your story. You know, how did your parents tell you that you were donor conceived? How did you react? When did you learn? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I was conceived through donor sperm in the early 90s, forever ago. And my parents started talking to me about being donor conceived when I was about four and a bit, I think. What I always find interesting is that they had never, so when they went through treatment, the consensus at the time was that you shouldn't tell, and that, I mean, not sort of explicitly, but the understanding was that, it would be kind of a hush hush kind of thing. And so they kind of went along with that through sort of treatment and through, sort of having me. And then I think it was really when I started to sort of grow up and have to, my mum and dad say that it was when I developed more of a personality and became a little person as opposed to a kind of a baby or like a sort of an idea. And that's when they decided, or they sort of started to realize that there would be a point where it would go from omitting information to actively having to lie, I think. And that's when they sort of got resources from the Donor Conception Network. They got the My Story book, which is now very old and sort of falling apart in our household. But the sort of, the original, I guess, resource. I think they still use the same language, the sort of the kind man, kind lady thing. So they started talking to me about it when I was 4 and a bit. I don't really remember it. I guess that's why I always say that I've always known, because there was never a point when I was aware of like being told or being sat down at like the kitchen table or anything. It was a kind of it was integrated into bedtime stories, and it just became another thing. I think I always say that kids, when they're young, are like little sponges and everything's new anyway. And so, it's, I think early is the best time to start that conversation.
And how do you feel about your conception? Would you be keen to meet your donor, for example? Do you think about them?
Yeah, so I've always felt broadly fine about it. I think it's one of those things that, as with many issues, as you sort of, or not issues, but like as many things, when you kind of grow up and you go from childhood to teenagehood to adulthood, your perspective changes on many things. We change our minds about politics and, lifestyles and all sorts of stuff. So I guess I have been more or less interested in my background and origins as I've been at different kind of ages, particularly I think sort of early years, being like a, teenager and a young adult. I was like, ugh, whatever, I'm so over it, it's fine, like no big deal kind of thing. And it was very, I was very kind of like, whatever, it's, it's blasé, yes, okay, I'm very cool and different, But, I've always, even through that, I was always very happy talking about it if anybody asked anything. And I guess more recently, as I've sort of properly grown up, I suppose, I've been thinking more, I guess, about connections, because I'm an only child in my immediate family, but I know that I have 18 half siblings somewhere. So I've always been interested in what they would be like, and I think in terms of what they look like, do they have similar interests, are there kind of shared things there? But the donor I've never been that interested in, I think, because I've got a mum and a dad, and because they are my parents, I don't really feel like there's anything missing from my kind of family structure. But I think also, I know donor conceived people who have been raised by single parents or two mums, and they feel the same. But I mean, everyone can feel differently, so I'm not going to say that's the like universal experience. But I've never felt like I've never felt much interest about the donor, other than sort of passing, I wonder what they're like. I wonder if there's any medical conditions that I should know about, but that's kind of not at the forefront of my mind. So I guess the irony is that I signed up to 23andMe a couple of years ago to try and find half siblings. They had a special offer on, I think around Christmas. I went for it. I was like, fine, it's like 60 quid. But despite having 18 half siblings, I thought, well, the likelihood is one of them will be on there. I'll find one and we can, then see if we want to be in touch or anything. And then the irony is that I ended up finding out who the sperm donor was through 23andMe. It's actually a very funny story that centers around me being overconfident about my understanding of genetics, because I was very, I'd looked into it and I knew that the percentage of your genetics shared between a half sibling, an aunt or uncle and a grandparent, I think, is the same proportion. And so when someone came up as an uncle on 23andMe, I was like, I'm not going to be fooled by this. I know this is probably a half sibling and the algorithm just can't cope. So I'm merrily messaged and I'm like, oh, hey, I think I might know why we're connected. And then he was like, I think it's my brother you should talk to, his email address. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? So anyway, but that was fine. We exchanged some emails. He seems nice. But yeah, so that was all very weird. So I went out, sort of actively looking for half siblings, not really wanting necessarily to find out who the donor was, and I got the opposite. So, but that's been fine, to be honest. Like it was a little bit odd, a bit ironic, but not kind of earth-shattering anyway. I just found it quite funny.
We have a question, which is that someone's sister has twins from egg donation. They're 6 years old. She started telling them about the egg donation about a year ago. And they're too young to understand that there's another woman at the end of this who helped give the egg. And she wonders if it will be harder to explain their history. Do you think it's the curiosity is something that comes with children getting older and more curious? Or do you think that, as you said, it's kind of like the sponge, and that maybe they're not actively registering it, but actually it is going in?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can sometimes have lots of different ways of trying to explain things. I think I was always aware that there was an additional person. I think the sort of the storybooks definitely help because they have like little cheesy illustrations of who this person might be, and I think I think it is difficult because also, like, I know that a lot of the time when mum and dad were trying to talk to me about it, I was like, I don't care, I want to play with Lego. So you have to kind of overcome that. They're kids and they just don't care. But I think it is a difficult one. I think sometimes my parents maybe overdid it because they were so anxious to make sure that I would be well adjusted and okay, and there would never be any kind of, you're not my real dad, because I think that's a big worry whenever prospective parents talk to me. They're like, but did you ever scream across the dinner table? I'm like, no, I was a teenager, I screamed lots of things probably, but none of them it was never that. It was always like, all my other friends have mobile phones, and so I think I feel like I've gone on a tangent a bit, but so being 6 and not quite understanding, I think curiosity comes with more just general understanding. I think when I got to be sort of 9 or 10 and you start doing science lessons at school, and I would sort of bring it up and be like, well, this biology book says this thing, but I know there's another way to make a baby. And so that was obviously really well received by all my teachers and stuff. That was fine. But where am I going with this? But yes, so I think that, at different developmental stages, and again, this is something for a proper person to talk about, but I think kids have different ways of understanding things, and sometimes you just have to keep plugging at it, but don't be disheartened if they don't seem to quite get it yet, because there might become a point where they click, and they go, oh, so this means that there's another lady, or there's another person, and it's worth being prepared for that moment where something does click and they start asking questions you maybe weren't prepared for, because I think that's something that a lot of people encounter, is that you kind of talk to a tiny baby who's like, oh, cool, and you're like, oh, excellent, no more difficult questions, and then they turn 6 or 7 and they're like, but hang on, how did the seed get in there? And you're like, oh. So I think it's one of those things you have to keep.
But it's so true, and it's such an interesting point that you make, that they're kids, and there's certain things that they don't that won't register, at least until later. Becky, I saw you nodding quite vigorously.
Yeah, lots of questions I'm expecting, and I definitely have had the fear of the "you're not my real mum" being thrown across the room, but I know that, and I know Jana talks a lot about kind of different development stages within the book, and kind of when to expect things, and kind of teenage years, they'll be finding their identity, they'll be going through so many different emotions, and I think it's just being prepared that that's not personal to me. They're going to go through these sort of phases, and it's just great to hear Kate's kind of story, and how kind of positive you are about it, because I think a lot of us go into this worrying about how our children are going to feel, and I'll be honest, that's one of my biggest worries, that they won't be comfortable with it, but I think we can project how we feel onto them. So I feel that the more comfortable I feel and the more prepared I am, the more open I am, that has got to have an impact on how they are going to see things as they grow up. So yeah, there's a lot of things we can't control, but there's a lot of things we can as well. So I think it's just trying to do the very best. So thank you so much, Kate.
Yeah, happy to.
And Kate is coming along to the event, aren't you?
Yes,
September,
it's in my calendar. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so wonderful to hear your story, Kate. I've got another question that came in through email, and it's a difficult one, but I think your answer would be really interesting if you have one. So this is from someone who's using overseas anonymous egg donation. She's asking, do you think that future children will resent that decision?
That's a very difficult one, because it's one of those things that you can't legislate for. You never know. But I mean, so from my point of view, so I was conceived after the creation of the HFEA in the UK, but before the removal of anonymity in 2005. So the information that I had previously from the HFEA was very limited. It was like height, eye colour, some dull hobbies, and kind of, you know, that was sort of it. So I think from my point of view, I was fine with that. I think because I was not interested in finding out who the donor was, I think it didn't occur to me that I should be entitled to more information. And I think that's something that my viewpoint has changed on since then, because I think just because I wasn't interested doesn't mean that I shouldn't also have been entitled had I decided that I was interested. So that's one of those tricky things. I think so I think now that you should give children access to as much information as is available as you can get. I also think that with the kind of, you know, the advent of easy, very cheap DNA testing, it might not become so much of an issue in years to come. I accidentally found out who my donor was on 23andMe. So in theory, I could now ask him lots of questions about anything I wanted to find out that I hadn't already got from the HFEA. But I do think that it's one of those things where you are sort of choosing to bring a child into the world, and I think you should keep in mind, and again, this is just, you know, my sort of outlook as someone who's grown up without some information and then acquired some later, and I think your outlook should be about what is the likelihood that my child might want this information. If there's the slightest chance that it is important to them to find out these things, it should be available, accessible when they turn 18. And I'm aware that's not always possible if you can't go to a country or a clinic where that information is there. But I think if at all possible, you want to give those options to your child, your future child.
I can't believe it's almost 7:30, so I'm just going to quickly do a few more questions. A huge thank you to Jana, by the way, who's been answering these questions, typing in just furiously. So thank you so much. She's answered over 30 questions. A few of them, I'm just going to jump around. Alison, does Altrui only work with egg donors and recipients, or match embryo donation as well? And how long would the matching process take?
We only do egg donation and not donor embryos. That's a whole different thing. And matching takes anything from a day, a week, a month to 6 months. It just depends on the sort of person you're hoping to find in a donor, and obviously different factors come into play in that as well, about the whether or not it's the time to find donors. So yeah, it can be any length of time, really. It's getting the right person, as I've said.
Becky, how did your partner feel about egg donation? Did he find the concept difficult at first? We often hear stories of the female perspective, but not the male.
Yeah, so Matt, he took probably a bit longer than me to get his head around it. but he has recently written a blog post for me on the exact question. So how did he feel about it? So I know we're short of time, but on my blog site, definingmum.com, there is a blog post written by my husband about his thoughts and feelings. And quite a few men have read that and said, oh, God, it's like he's got inside my head. And actually, it was quite eye-opening for me to read as well, to hear, like, kind of, because it all felt very much about me at the time, but actually he was also having to go through these big decisions. So yeah, there is a blog post on that.
Amazing. Wonderful. We've had such an amazing group of speakers. I wanted to ask if there's anything you would like to say to the over 160 people who've attended.
Well, I just wanted to add, there were a couple of questions about when you talk to your family and friends about donation, and it's very situational. Again, it depends on the age of your child and who's interacting with your child and your level of privacy. So there's a lot we can go into that, but there's some information in my book about that as well. So I think that was one of the questions that came through, and maybe there was one more, but I can't remember it. So.
And Leanne, Kate, anything that you'd like to say to, so this room is people who are learning about donor conception, maybe as a route to motherhood. Anything you'd like to say?
I mean, all I can sort of talk about is from a donor's perspective, but I would certainly say if you've got that initial thought there that you want to help somebody, then definitely make that call and find out more information. There's plenty of us here that can talk to and answer any questions they've got, even if they want to speak to a donor themselves. You know, I'm more than happy to speak with them directly if they want to ask any questions from donor to donor.
Thank you. And Kate?
Yeah, I'm not sure really. Thank you so much for having me here and for, you know, listening to me garble and stuff. And yeah, I hope that everyone has a good journey wherever it ends up.
Alison, it would be great if you could tell people if someone has a question on egg donation or a clinical question, where should they go?
Okay, so any questions about egg donation, then probably come to us directly. You can email info@altrui.co.uk. You can pick up the telephone. Everything is there on the website. If you've got clinical questions, I can direct you to Fertility, who are able and quite prepared and capable of answering those questions. We work very closely with them. They're part of Altrui. And yeah, I think really that's the thing to do, is to just ask away. I mean, everybody here has just been amazing, and there's a huge amount of support for you guys out there. You know, don't think you're on your own. There is a massive number of people here to help you through this journey, to give you support, to give you guidance, and to just be there, because you will have wobbles. It's completely normal. But actually, you know, they will go. If you can get that baby, everything you've heard about, all the fears and the worries and concerns, it will just disappear.
Thank you so much, Alison. I'll say just a few words and then I'm going to hand over to you, Becky. I'm going to be sending around links with all the information that we've outlined today, so the different resources, and also a survey. If you could tell us what you found helpful, that would really mean a lot to us, and also what you'd like to hear more about, so we can try and cater and do more events. We're really looking forward to meeting you at Becky's events later in the year, and just a really heartfelt thank you to all of the speakers. I know it's been a huge value, so it's just an absolute pleasure from our side. And yeah, Becky, I'll
thank you so much. I'm hoping you can hear me, because my
yeah.
A bit unstable, so hopefully I'll get through this. So yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has joined us, and we've still got nearly 150 people still on, so thank you for listening. I hope you found it helpful, and then just a massive thank you to Jana for taking the time to come and speak to us. As always, such good insights, and definitely if you're looking into this, check out the book, and there's a new workbook as well that goes alongside it. Thank you, Leanne. This is the second time I've spoken with Leanne, and it still makes me emotional every time I hear about why you chose to donate, and just thinking about the impact that you've made for somebody. And Kate, thank you. We've spoken on the phone, but we've not kind of met face to face yet. But it's just great to have your perspective. And I know I think sometimes for someone who's donor conceived, it can feel a lot of pressure with everybody asking, so how do you feel? How do you feel? And it's just kind of remembering that that's one person's perspective, but it's just great to get that kind of reassurance that I think from like sort of a young age, being told that you can be okay about it, and it's part of you, and you are happy to speak out about it, because I think that that's really important for people who are looking to make these decisions to hear. So yeah, just a huge thank you. If anybody is interested in the event, send me an email. We'll make sure my email address is on the resources, and what I will do is pop you on a waiting list, and then once I get the second date sorted, which I don't want to do too early just because who knows what's going to happen at the moment, then I will send out some information to you so you've got a chance of getting a ticket. And yeah, just a huge thank you again to everyone. It feels like it's been a really great evening.
Yep, thank you to everyone for joining us, and once again, thank you also for the questions. They're really a part of you, and it's a real privilege to be able to discuss these as a topic. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
Sorry, I was saying I missed out Alison as well, and yourself, Julia, just in terms of saying thank you. And I was just going around and I realised I went off on a tangent about the event. I think for making something like this possible is making a huge difference for people. And I know so many people, myself included, when they were first told about needing to use a donor, or the fact that that might be the route they need to take, it has been done in probably not the right way, and in a way that is just like another add-on or something like that, or you might a throwaway comment. And what's great to see is that there are clinics out there like yourselves who recognise the emotional impact and the importance of the support throughout, because it's a journey and it's not an easy one for people. But yeah, I'm just really delighted to be working with you guys, because I love what you're doing, and I think you're helping lots and lots of people. So thank you, and thank you, Julia, for keeping it on time. And
well, we're 3 minutes over, so
that's my fault.
But my pleasure. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, everyone. Take care, stay safe, and yeah, if you have any more questions, we will try our best to get through them all over the next few days.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.